Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Sifting Reclaiming Authenticity, episode number 4. Today we are talking about leadership, and we're excited to be back with you guys here chatting with you. Just ready to have another great discussion to try and learn from each other and to see what you guys think. This is a big subject we're talking about today. Can go in a lot of different directions. We've kind of chosen a specific direction to take it here, but I think we really enjoy what we're talking about here, and we hope you guys do too. So I'm Jonah. It's great to be back with you guys again. Again, thank you for listening to us today. I'm here with my beautiful wife, Lindsay. Lindsay, do you have anything to say? No. Well, we'll get into it here in a few minutes. I was trying to think of something we could do for like rapid fire questions because we did that last time, and I liked it. I don't know if the people listening liked it, but I seem to like it. But I can only really think of one question today, and that was, what is your favorite hobby outside of doing ministry? Right? So like not related to ministry whatsoever. What's something that you enjoy doing that brings you happiness? Right? Lindsay, you just told me what your answers are, but I want the people to hear what your answers are. So what is your favorite hobby? Again, this is outside of ministry or doing any sort of leadership. What is that?
I like to hang out with my dogs. Walk them and train them. And just be lazy with them.
You like TV, right?
Yeah, TV is more, I just put it on to have noise. I would go crazy otherwise. I work at home. There's nobody around. I need some human noises. And I scrap journal, if you know what that is.
Right.
But yeah, I don't do much.
You do a lot. Yeah, you're into TV. There's a certain series that I know you've watched at least 3 times through. I won't name it here, but there's a certain series I know you've watched. You're into journaling. I don't think people know. People may not know about Toffee and Nutmeg, right? So you've seen our dogs, Toffee and Nutmeg. You probably hear them in the background right now. But you've seen our little dogs, Toffee and Nutmeg, on our social media. So Toffee is, she's just over a year old. She's like 1 and a couple months now. We got her when she was 3 months, 4 months, just about 3 months old. And we were convinced that there was never going to be a dog crazier than Toffee. Because she's an Australian Shepherd. If you know anything about Australian Shepherds, their exertion of energy is what satisfies them, right? They're happiest when they can play, when they can go on walks, when they can go in the backyard and jump around and do zoomies, right? That's like when they're happiest. They're not a dog that likes to sit around. They like getting up and just moving. They're movers, right? So Toffee, when we got Toffee, we lived in this little 2-bedroom townhouse, and she would just do zoomies across our really small. So we had like a living room and a kitchen combined, and Toffee would just do zoomies across this room for ages, and then we go upstairs and she'd do zoomies all the way across the room. So we had one hallway really that we could toss a toy down, and she could play fetch with us because she loves playing fetch, right? But we had no backyard, nothing like that. So we've been living in a house for some time now, and she's been loving the backyard, having the backyard to run around in, see the neighbor dogs, go after moles. Like, she's enjoying it. She's loving it. But then Nutmeg came along, and Toffee kind of chilled out, and Nutmeg took the crazy reins, right? The crazy train, yeah. So Nutmeg is funny because she is the loudest dog ever. Like Toffee was crazy, but she was quiet. So Nutmeg is crazy and she's loud about it. So right, she'll get up at 7 o'clock in the morning every day and just whine and whine and whine and scream and yell until you take her outside, right? If she feels like she's being ignored, she'll just sit and whine at you and whine at you. If she's playing with Toffee, I don't even know what she does with Toffee. It's some sort of growl, scream mix. I don't know what you'd call that. You'd have to hear it to believe it. But yeah, that's Toffee and Nutmeg. It's her war cry, right? Lindsay's calling it a war cry. I like that idea. But Nutmeg's a border collie retriever mix. So she's a very touchy dog, whereas Toffee's not as touchy, but she still enjoys doing all the activities that Toffee does. So you kind of get the best of both worlds with those two breeds combined. Anyway, what were we talking about? Your hobbies outside of ministry, right? I think for me, I have several. So I'm very inspired by film directors. So I love great movies, right? I think we may have talked about this last week. We did talk about this last week. I'm deeply inspired by filmmakers just because I love that they can take their vision and they can have 100 different factors that play into making that vision happen, right? So a filmmaker has like a budget and they have actors and they have set pieces and they have scripts and they have certain times that they can film and they have all of these things going together along with the pressure of Hollywood backing them and giving them millions of dollars to make this movie and Hollywood banking on the fact that it's going to be good. So there's a lot of pressure on them. And I just love when a film comes out and it turns out just terrific. Like when we saw Dune last year, it was deeply inspiring to me to say, I think his name is Denis Villeneuve is the director of that movie. And I love everything that he's put out. So Dune was like super inspiring to me. I'm a gamer, which Lindsay knows. So I'm big into gaming. I am a reader, obviously. I think I've mentioned different books on here. I can't remember. I'm a reader, and I like exercising, which you may not guess if you looked at me. But I mainly enjoy jogging, right? Jogging, I don't know. There's something about it that you jogging people who are listening to this know exactly what I'm talking about. So, yeah, those are some things I like to do. We just want you guys to get to know us a little bit better. We're not just a face or a voice, that you're looking at or listening to every couple weeks, but we want you guys to get to know us. So that's the whole reason that we do that. So those are some of the things that we do outside of doing this podcast or any sort of leadership. Okay. Speaking of leadership, goodness, today we are talking about leading well, right? So leadership is something that is so vitally and critically important to young people seeking to do ministry or anybody seeking to do ministry. Learning how to lead well is absolutely invaluable. And I think there's somewhat of a mindset that I see now where I think there's a lot of people that are on fire for Jesus, which I think is wonderful. They're on fire for Jesus. They are adamant and they're excited about pursuing calling. But one thing that they don't take into account is that there is a way of operating in that calling that makes them successful or makes them not successful, and that hinges on their ability to lead well, right? So today we just want to talk for a couple minutes about what leading well looks like. I'm going to be referencing a book here in a couple minutes that I have that I think is timeless in its information and in its application to our lives. But leadership, I think, is important because, number one, I think it's a mirror to our own selves. When we start to study leadership, we begin to see what our strengths are and we begin to see what our weaknesses are. when we read about a trait of a great leader, we have to really look at ourselves in the mirror and say, wow, I think that's a strength of mine. More often than not, I look at an aspect of leadership and I say, wow, I think that's a weakness of mine, or something that I want to grow more into, right? So it's a mirror to ourselves, first off. As we study leadership, we are studying how to make ourselves more refined in every way imaginable, and in many ways that we don't even see right off the bat. And then obviously, outside of ourselves, it allows us to excel in whatever we're leading. So any sort of ministry, organization, anything like that. So anything that we find ourselves leading, obviously leadership and studying what leadership is allows us not just to pass by, but it allows us to excel. It allows us to really pour into people, bring out the very best of people, and create something that is genuinely worth putting our time and our energy into. So we aren't experts in this. Every person is growing on their leadership journey, and by no means do we think we've arrived. Do you have something that you want to say about that? I know you were talking to me about that whole idea of like us growing in leadership.
I feel personally you brought up this topic and I was almost hesitant to talk about it because I think I'm not leading anything, how can I just a feeling of how can I talk about it when I don't have a title, I guess. And I think some of that comes from our age, solely based on our age. We're kind of discounted as leaders in a lot of arenas in life in general. But I think it's a big mistake to not include people younger than you in your leadership circles just because of the fresh perspective that they bring. And even if you're not interested in ministry, in leading a business, if you want to be married, if you've decided you want to have kids, those are detrimental leadership positions where if you don't lead well, instead of your business going down the drain or your ministry not working out, those can lead to what I would call greater harm in life, in coming to a separation or divorce, or a chasm between you and your children and your family. So I think just leadership skills are important for everyone, and we shouldn't discount having them if we don't have a title to go with them, I guess.
Yeah, that's really good. I think we've both seen results of leadership done so well that it elevates everybody else in the room, no matter what they're doing or who they are. And I think on the other side of that, we've been in situations before where we've seen leadership done so poorly that it damages everybody exponentially. And so, if anything, leadership should be valuable to us because of the result that it has on other people, right? Which is a deeply Christian instinct at its heart. Pursuing something or pursuing the excellence of something because it has a direct effect on others and a potentially life-changing for the better effect on somebody else should be important to us. And that's deeply Christian in its nature, right? I have to stop saying right. Somebody told me, I know I'm like breaking this up right now, but I spoke at our church a few nights ago, and somebody came up and told me after the service, they said, your anchor word is right. Was it you? It was you, and I'm pretty sure Eli did also, if he's listening. So Eli came up and said that to me also. So I have to do better about that. Anyway, yes, having a title is great, but we have all been in rooms. Everybody listening to this, if you have been in any sort of organization before, you have been in rooms where the leader was not the person with the title. The person with the title was not the leader. The leader was the one that had the most influence on everybody else. The person who everybody else looks at and they want to be like. And they want to act like them in a good way. It could be a good or a bad way, right? They could be leading in a bad way where everybody wants to be like them, but they really shouldn't be like them. Or everybody wants to be like them and they absolutely should be like them. So yeah, leadership is never about having a title. It's always about the influence that you have over other people. So one other thing that I had down here, having a refined sense of leadership is deeply glorifying to God, right? As Christian people, Toffee's making a entrance into our video. So as deeply Christian people, we want what we do to be glorifying to God, right? And a commitment to leadership excellence in ourselves and in others deeply glorifies God. So what we're going to be talking about, there are, like we said, there's so many different directions we could go when we talk about this. But I think the way that we kind of felt led was into this book right here. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see the cover. If you're not, that's okay. It is the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership by the timeless John C. Maxwell, right? One of the leadership gurus of the previous day and of our modern day. John C. Maxwell, anything that he writes, go and read it. Anything he writes, take that advice because what he has to say is absolutely gold. So I had a former youth pastor who I interned with give me this book. And he said, I want you to go through this book and I want you to really work on refining your leadership. And this so deeply impacted me that it changed so much of how I think. And I still think about many of these laws today all the time because they're timeless, right? They're tested and they're true and they work when we apply them. He says in the introduction of the book that all we have to do is apply these, and within time they will work. So we're not going to go through all of these today, but if what we have said resonates with you and you enjoy what we talk about here, I would just encourage you to go ahead and get this book. There are free resources all over the internet talking about it. The book, I can't imagine it to be very expensive. It's been out for a very long time. It's very popular. So go out and get this book by John C. Maxwell. So we want to just talk about a couple of these that really resonate with us. So I'll go ahead and go first. One of the ones that resonates with me is what he refers to as the law of addition. And we've kind of been referring to this throughout the episode so far, but the law of addition really comes down to this. Leadership is about others. It's not about you, right? So there's a website that I've been going to for some more summaries on all of these. If you want to look it up, it's called Trinitas Advisors, a summary of John C. Maxwell's 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. So I'm looking at their article right now, and I'm looking for the law of addition. And this is how they summarize it from the book. The law of addition focuses on advancing others, not ourselves. Leadership is an act of service to others, and the true leader focuses on creating value for others. The best place to serve is where we can add the most value to others. Leaders add value to others by valuing others and relating to what others value. True leaders ask, how can I serve? Because they are focused on service. It's not so much what's in it for me. Oh my gosh, that's a lot of time saying value and saying others. Anyway, this is all about others, and it's all about what can I do for somebody else, right? There, I did it again. Our pastor, when he's teaching leadership, our pastor at our local church, when he teaches leadership, one of the things that he mentions is every person is asking you 3 questions. And one of those questions that they're asking is, what can you do for me? So every person you encounter is asking inwardly, what does this person have to offer me? How can they make my life easier? And when we live with the law of addition in our minds, we are thinking naturally not so much about what we can get out of a situation, but we're thinking about what we can add to a situation. We're thinking about what we can add to others to make their life better in any way. It could be as simple as asking them if they need help when you're at work and you are seeing or hearing that they're struggling in some way with either work or life. It's as simple as asking, hey, can I help you? Is there anything that I can do for you? And that goes an incredibly long way with somebody. When you open up the door and say that you are my concern, I am secondary. Helping you and making you feel valuable is deeply important to me. And I think the reason this resonates with me a lot is because it's a Christian value at its core. Asking yourself, what can you do for others? Asking yourself, how can you add to a room and not take away from a room? And how you add to a room is by putting yourself second and putting everybody else in front of you first. So I believe there is a quote from John Maxwell that this website mentions, and it says, the best place for a leader isn't always the top position. It isn't the most prominent or powerful place. It's the place where he or she can serve the best and add the most value to other people. Great leaders, or this is after the quote, great leaders place the value of their followers above all else, even their own successes. So again, this is all about value. And people will deeply respect those who value them. When they see somebody whose concern is to bring out the best in them, when they see somebody whose concern is to make their life better, to make their situation better, that brings respect. Somebody who is committed to bringing out the very best parts of people and committed to calling into the greatness within people and the uniqueness within people is extremely powerful. So that's just one of them, the law of addition. There's a whole lot more we could go into with that, but we just want to briefly summarize a couple of these. So, Lindsay, what's one that stands out to you that you really enjoy? I guess why does it resonate with you? And yeah, you know what I mean.
The first one I have here is it's incredibly simple. It's the law of the picture, and it's essentially summed up as people don't do what they hear. They do what they see. And I mean, that feels pretty basic to me. if if you want to be a good leader, you can't like tell people to be on time for work, for practice, whatever it is, and then you mosey in 15 minutes late. It's all about, the standards you set for yourself. If you set them for yourself and you set them for the people following you, like, people will generally rise to meet standards. Like, I feel like it's an innate desire in us to do well, to like reach goals. And if we're not setting standards by showing the standards through the way we behave, then there just won't be any. And you can say all day long, I don't know, practice this at home. But if you get there and you haven't listened, they're going to think, well, that must not actually be important to you, or you would have done it. I mean, it feels pretty basic. Yeah.
Yeah. People do what they see 100% of the time. They don't do what they're told as much as they do what's shown to them. Like the ratio with that is way off balance. It's not even 50-50. It's not even close. People will almost always do what they see. That's how children learn. Kids learn based on what they see. You could be doing the goofiest thing ever, and you don't know that your kid's watching you. And the next thing you know, your kid's doing it. And you're like, wow, I actually don't want my kid to be doing that. Why they don't do what you tell them. They do what they see, right? So yeah, that's a really good one. So another one I got here is the law of the big mo, which sounds like a cartoon movie or something. But the big mo, as John Maxwell puts it, is momentum, which is a huge word. What does momentum even mean? So the Trinitas website says this: if we have all of the passion, tools, and people we need to win, we're in trouble if we can't get things going. Big Mo is momentum, and momentum is a close friend of effective leaders. When we have no momentum, even the smallest tasks seem insurmountable, and small problems look like huge obstacles. On the other hand, when we have momentum on our side, the future looks bright. Obstacles appear small, and trouble seems unimportant. Creating momentum requires someone who has a vision to assemble a good team and motivate others. Momentum starts with energy and enthusiasm to create and celebrate small wins to show consistent progress, which is a powerful motivator. I think one of the hardest things, I think this is just in the human experience. One of the hardest things is starting something brand new, or just in general, starting something and being able to begin the movement of a thing, whether it be this podcast, right? We brainstormed what we wanted for this podcast. We talked about what we wanted our vision to be. We talked about why what we wanted to name it, why we named it the sifting, reclaiming authenticity. We had this document on our computer where we just went through different episode scripts and we talked about different things that we wanted to do and so forth. But there came a point where we just had to kind of do it, like where we had to start making it move, start putting some momentum behind the ideas that we had, which is incredibly challenging because in order to have momentum, you need motivation. And in order to have motivation, you have to have a really solid idea that gets your buy-in, that gives you the motivation to make it happen, right? So just starting something is difficult because it requires a lot of energy from us and it requires a lot of foresight from us. We're wired so that we don't want to just get up and do something for the sake of doing it. I think we're wired as human beings. I'm not a psychologist, but I believe we're wired to do something because we see purpose within why we're doing it. So in order for us to have momentum, in order for us to get something moving, a lot of that comes down to having a vision and being able to see the purpose within what we're doing, right? So momentum, it's something that is so difficult because it requires that energy and foresight from us. But for the organizations we lead, it couldn't be more valuable because people need to see and they have to have some sort of vision to buy into. And eventually they're going to start asking, okay, when are things going to start moving? When are things going to start happening? We have all been in meetings. I don't know if you've been in any sort of like a ministry meeting or a work meeting or a family-based meeting where you were talking about different family whatever. We've all been in meetings where things have been talked about, but they have never left the ground. They have never left our idea boards. And a lot of that is because we can't get momentum behind it to actually get it moving. And we have to give ourselves grace because that's challenging, because that's really, really difficult. But momentum is something that as we continue to be solidified in our vision behind a thing, it gives us that energy to continue with it. So if you're searching for momentum and if you're searching for motivation, go back to your vision. Go back to why it is you're doing this. And refine that. Refine the image of that vision into something that is able to give you that extra boost. Maybe there's something within it that you're not seeing that if you were to see, it would give you that boost. Or maybe somebody else needs to come alongside of you and say, hey, I can help you do this. I can help you supply this vision. I can help you get this moving. It's a challenge for all of us. But I think the Holy Spirit is in this. And I think the scripture says where there is no vision, people perish. So vision is something that is crucially important to the Holy Spirit. And I think when we hand that over to him and we really pursue what it means to have a vision, I think he helps us in that and assists us with that in whatever way he can. Lindsay, what's the next one?
Oh, the law of the inner circle. Okay. The law of the inner circle states that those closest to us will determine our potential as a leader. They should be people who have our best interest at heart, want to see us succeed, and are able to hold us accountable. Our strength as leaders comes only partially from what we know. It's also dependent on the skills of our inner circle and how closely connected our inner circle is to each other. An example of the law of the inner circle comes from Mother Teresa, who said, "You can do what I can't do. I can do what you can't do. Together we can do great things." recently I've been seeing a lot of these. It's like the Adobe Creative Personality quiz.
We both did.
Yeah. And on each one of those, it tells you, what your creative personality is, but then it also tells you like what your like ideal collaborator is. And I think that's kind of really like a good example of this law is finding people that are good at what you are not. And as well as just finding these people, I think you have to especially like make this group of people feel valued. I listen to Carey Nieuwhof's podcasts a lot, and I read his blog, and he mentioned in an article about how when people are kind of up and coming and you've found that they're like particularly skilled in an area and particularly skilled in helping you lead in that area, that they should have extra investment put into them. Like, you should invest particularly in this inner circle in a leadership setting. So just having these people that complement your abilities and you complement their abilities will take you to places way farther than you could go on your own. And so, yeah.
Yeah. And it's, if I could add anything to that also, it really takes us to be humble and admit that, you know what, we're not good at everything. We're not supposed to be good at everything. If somebody's good at everything, that means their name is Jesus. And that means that's none of us, right? So it takes a lot of humility to say, you know what, I need other people to come alongside me to make this happen. Very few people can do something on their own, do something of scale on their own. They need other people to come alongside them and to help them supply that vision. So yeah, that's really good. I like that. Okay, so I'm just going to do one more here. And it's the law of the lid, which is one of my favorite ones. This one is one I go back to over and over again. We don't have a ton of time left, so I'm going to move a little bit quickly. The law of the lid, essentially, in a quick sentence summary, means that an organization only goes as high as its leader goes. It cannot go above the leader. So if you are at from a scale of 1 to 10, if you are at a 6 on the leadership scale. Okay, we're back. So our dogs are crazy, so we had to put them up for a little while. Anyway, we were talking about the law of the lid, right? So your organization only goes as high as you go. So I was saying, if on a scale from 1 to 10, if you are a 6 at a leadership level, your organization can't go higher than a 6. If you're at an 8, your organization might be an 8, which is good, but it won't go higher than an 8, which is why we need to shoot for 10. If we're at a 10, the organization will be at a 10. It only goes as high as the leader goes. So it's motivation for us to grow as leaders when we know that directly what we do, or what we do that directly improves our leadership abilities, is going to improve the ministry or the organization that we lead. So knowing that our decisions are affecting not only us, but it's affecting everybody around us, and it's affecting the outcome of our vision, it's affecting our mission of everything that we want to do, it's affecting the people's morale that are following you, the people that you are leading. It's affecting their morale. It's affecting their work ethic. It's affecting your return. Everything depends on how high the leader is able to go. If an organization or a leader or a ministry is suffering, it's because mainly the leader is not high enough for the ministry to go with them. So if a ministry is at a or elite organization, I say ministry or organization because I'm not just talking about, this isn't just for the church world. This is for every arena of life. If an organization or a ministry is suffering and it's at a 3, it's because the leader is at a 3. And it should be motivation for a leader to continue to increase their capacities for the organization to be able to go as high as it can go. The best businesses and the best organizations throughout the world that are hyper successful are because they have amazing, excellent leadership, right? So some of the churches that have just enormous amounts of success with what they do, a lot of that is contributed to a pastor and a leadership team that pushes themselves to be the very best that they can possibly be. And in turn, their church becomes the very best it can possibly be. So the law of the lid, it's motivation for us to grow as leaders, knowing that our decisions and that our commitment to growth is directly affecting not only me, but the level that the organization can or cannot go to. So Lindsay, what's just one more that you want to talk about before we finish up today?
The law of sacrifice, which it can be summed up in leaders trade freedom for responsibility. And I've had conversations with Jonah before where to understand like my background and really what I'm thinking of when I talk about leadership is like I've been on a ton of worship teams, and I've talked with Jonah before about, there are people who think that they want to be the leader of a worship team who don't have any clue what those leaders are sacrificing to be in that position. Like, I think some people think, well, if I'm the worship leader, I get to show up and be the big guy on stage who makes all the decisions, right? And it's like, well, no. You've got to devote time to looking for music, picking out sets, meeting with everyone who's a part of your team, who's under you, meeting with some of the people that may have issues with you and your decisions. And not only are you the face of the team, of the business, of the organization. You're the face that people are going to come after if they disagree with something. It may be that someone who's on your team did something that they didn't like, but they report to you, so it becomes your problem. And I've noticed that rather than sacrifice in a lot of cases, as people want to move up in leadership, instead of sacrifice, there come more excuses. Like, there's not the sacrifice to get there on time. There's the excuse of why they're late. But you expect them to be late. They are so consistently late that is what you expect of them, and they always have an excuse rather than the sacrifice to make it. And yeah, that pretty much sums up the law of sacrifice, is trading freedom for responsibility. And that is something incredibly important that you have to understand. If the higher you go in leadership, the more it's going to cost you. And you have to be willing, or everyone under you suffers for that.
Yeah, that's really good. It requires something of us, which is a grand statement to say for some people, thinking like, you mean doing something with excellence and doing something in leadership is going to like cost me something, like it's going to require something extra of me. You think that would just be like an idea you would know going into it, but it's amazing how many people, they want a leadership position, but they don't want to have that additional responsibility that comes with it. And they don't really understand what it means to, like, quote unquote, sacrifice in order to have the best results within that leadership position. Yeah, I love that. So we're going to wrap it up here. Just a couple other notes that we want to make. Leadership done right, when we apply all of this, the results are immensely powerful. It was Jesus who said in Luke 14:28, to kind of wrap all of this up within our Christian tradition about why we value this so much and about why this is important. It was Jesus who said, "Which of you desiring to build a tower does not first sit down and count the cost, whether he has enough to complete it?" So he's saying, who would sit down to build a tower and not build out their strategy for building that tower? And it's a message to us saying, why would we set out to do something, even if it's for God, and not sit down and really think about and analyze how we're going to do said thing? If we are leading people, why would we not sit down and count the costs and whether we have enough to complete it? Why would we not ask ourselves, what do I need to do in order for this to succeed? Of course we pray. Of course we are connected to God. But there are such practical methods that God is leading us into that are tried and true, that he's telling us, use these methods, use these ways of leading people, and you will succeed. I think the generation of leaders that is coming out now, the generation that is the generation that is beginning to take leadership positions and will start to take more leadership positions moving forward. One of the things that I think they need is that I think we need, I mean, I'm a part of that generation. So one of the things that I think we need are people who are refined in leadership basics. People who take things like the 21 Laws of Leadership, something that's been around for years and years, that millions of people have used. And it's not just a book that they read, and it's not just a concept that they hear about, but it's something that really they become refined in because they work. Like genuine basic leadership qualities work when we do them. They are guaranteed to work. Now, everybody's different, and it looks different for everybody, but in general, they work. So we can't go on to anything bigger or better until we refine ourselves in this first, which is a lesson for a lot of young people within the church to know, because everybody wants to be on fire for God, and everybody just wants to do everything out of their passion for God. But when you only do things out of your zeal for God, that can lead to immense destruction. Not only do you have to be zealous and on fire, but you need to be sharp, and you need to be. It was Casey Doss, a preacher I listened to. He said, "You not only need to be on fire, but you need to be sharp, like a sword. Sharp in the ways of leadership, sharp in the ways of interpreting and discerning the word and how to read it." So, a lot more that we could go into. A lot more that we could go into, and we will in future episodes. This podcast is about casting a more beautiful image for theology, ministry, and leadership. So it's one of our core values of why we do this, is because our heart is to see great leaders emerge. And it's our heart to see leaders of our generation and of future generations that will listen to this after we're gone and hear these things, not just coming from us, but coming from other people, that they would walk in it as well, and that they would be successful in the calling that God has on their generation. So it's one of our core values that we abide by here at the Sifting, that leadership is essential and that it is required in the kingdom or in whatever organization you're in. If you're not even a Christian and you're listening to this, this is useful information to you as well. Leadership is important. It's important to grow in it. We don't have to be perfect. We don't have to have a title. And we're all leaders in some way. Somebody is watching us. Somebody is following us, whether we think they are or not. Somebody's watching us. And so we're all leaders. And it's our responsibility for all of us to become refined within that. Lindsay, do you have anything you want to say before we close out?
I guess I noticed when looking through, there's the 21 Laws of Leadership. Most of them, tie back into one another. They're very related. And I think they all kind of come down to an even smaller number than 21 of these are just what I can think of off the top of my head. Is a lot of them tie back to setting and meeting standards for ourselves, valuing and committing our time and effort into the people around us who are following us, who we want to develop into leaders themselves. Just the fact that something has to be sacrificed for someone to make the thing go forward. Those are three I can think of right off the top of my head.
Yeah.
But they're all very related to each other.
I love that. I think that's a perfect way to end it. That these are all tied together and that they all go back to even deeper foundational truths that we could look at as well. I think that's a perfect note to end it on. Yeah, absolutely. They match the character of Jesus. And that's what being a Christian is. It's about, we were talking about this last night. It's about knowing Jesus more fully and living like Jesus more fully. That's what being a Christian is about. So by studying leadership, we become better Christians. That's so great. We didn't even talk about that beforehand. We didn't even have that on a script or nothing. But that's so good. I love what you said about that. So guys, we'll end it on that. We love you. We're thankful for you. Thank you for listening again, as always. You can find us on all our social media links. You'll hear them from Lindsay in the outro here. But yeah, just thank you guys for listening. We hope you enjoy the discussion today. If there are if you like this, if you have other ideas, we want to keep the discussion going. So reach out to us, comment on the video, like the video, share it, follow us on all our social media handles. We have a lot more that we do other than just the podcast. We have a lot of posting. We have a lot of great stuff that we do and that we have planned down the line that we're going to do. So lots of great stuff that's coming. But anyway, we love you guys. Thanks for listening again. We appreciate you. I'm Jonah. I'm here with my wife, Lindsay. Thank you guys for listening. Have a great week. Bye, guys.